Strap in, auto enthusiasts. This is Highway Herald, your roadmap to the latest in auto, where engines meet economics and steel meets strategy. We dive deep into the stories that move the industry, from geopolitical power plays to shop floor shakeups. And today's episode? A full-throttle clash between Canada and the US that's sending shockwaves through EVs, automakers, and beyond. With $22 billion in tariffs now in play, this is more than policy. It's a torque-fueled showdown. The trade Firestarter, when steel met sanctions. The spark that lit the fuse came in March, when President Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to justify a hefty 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, claiming it was a matter of national security. But to Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet in Ottawa, it wasn't about defense. It was economic sabotage dressed in diplomatic language. Washington claimed it was blocking Chinese steel rerouted through Canada, but leaked White House memos told a different story. This was about origin-switching loopholes, not Canadian quality. For Ottawa, that made the move personal. Initially, Carney's government played it cool, launching a $3.5 billion Canadian support fund for major producers like Stelco, Algoma, and Rio Tinto. But as hot-rolled coil prices surged, outpacing U.S. steel by over $300 per ton, pressure mounted. Builders were squeezed, and auto suppliers took hits to their bottom line. By June, Carney had enough. He authorized a full-scale counterstrike, a 50% tariff on $22 billion of U.S. goods. Canada wasn't retreating, it was taking the wheel. But this wasn't going to be a simple tit-for-tat. What came next shifted the trade conversation from muscle to metrics. Data, diplomacy, and driving a new trade strategy. Canada didn't just strike back, it rewrote the rulebook. Rather than mirror Trump's tariffs tit-for-tat, Prime Minister Carney launched a high-octane counteroffensive rooted in science, carbon accountability, and political unity. Ottawa was no longer reacting. It was seizing control of the trade narrative. In just 48 hours, Carney's team compiled emissions profiles, furnace chemistry data, and carbon isotope analysis to dismantle America's national security claim. Their message? Canadian steel isn't just strong, it's clean. Meanwhile, finance officials ran simulations. A 50% tariff on U.S. raw steel would spike prices by 420 Canadian dollars per ton, tacking on 850 Canadian dollars to SUVs and pickups built in the Detroit-Toronto corridor, slamming U.S. automakers directly in the margins. Canadians rallied. Polls showed 68% support for the tariffs. The NDP and Bloc Québécois backed Carney's stand, while even beverage giants like Molson joined labor unions in defending domestic producers. This wasn't just a counterpunch. It was a values-driven, climate-smart playbook, and Canada was in the driver's seat. Before we delve deeper, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to Highway Herald. Your support fuels our passion to create more content like this. Now let's explore how Carney turned the crisis into a climate opportunity. Greensteel Gambit, Canada's high-stakes industrial rebuild. At the heart of Canada's counterstrike was the bold Greensteel Accord, a $4.8 billion Canadian commitment to reforge its industrial backbone with cleaner, sharper tools. Carney's philosophy was simple. If Washington wants to punish Canada for clean steel, then Canada will make it even cleaner and unbeatable. Backed by Royal Bank of Canada credit guarantees, the fund supports sweeping capital upgrades, tax incentives, and cutting-edge R&D across the steel and aluminum sectors. The focus? Emissions-slashing innovation. In Hamilton, ArcelorMittal Dofasco's shift to electric arc furnaces got the green light. Algoma's hydrogen-based DRI line in Sault Ste. Marie was fast-tracked. And Rio Tinto's Quebec smelter pushed forward its inert anode tech, aiming to virtually erase carbon from aluminum smelting. But this wasn't just about factories. Automakers like GM, Tesla, and Ford rely on these metals to meet clean supply chain standards under the IRA. Even SpaceX counts on Montreal alloys for its rockets. Carney connected the plan to a tariff ladder, offering de-escalation, but only if Washington drops its steel saber. Diplomacy, wrapped in carbon fiber. Still, as Canada geared up for the future, U.S. industries began feeling the squeeze, and the fallout was fierce. Industry shockwaves and political whiplash. As Canada's retaliation roared to life, corporate America hit a wall. Detroit's automakers, already swerving through the EV transition, were blindsided. Ford and GM each forecasted a 45 million Canadian dollar hit per vehicle cycle, thanks to pricier Canadian steel and aluminum. For every truck or SUV using thick plate steel, margins shrank by about 320 Canadian dollars, a brutal hit in an already tight race for EV profitability. Even the beer aisle wasn't safe. The Brewers Association of Canada warned that a 5-cent jump in can prices could crush smaller craft breweries. While Ottawa considered carve-outs for large-scale producers, the financial ripples had already reached consumer shelves and executive boardrooms. Trump stayed defiant, drumming up support in steel stronghold states like Ohio and Pennsylvania. But data from the American Iron and Steel Institute painted a grim picture. A projected 7,800 job losses from declining blast furnace capacity. Meanwhile, Carney's coalition held firm. For him, this wasn't just a tariff war, it was a pivot. A values-first model challenging America's go-it-alone approach. And Washington? It was running out of lanes. And as the US stalled, the rest of the world started watching and planning their own next moves. The global pit lane, allies, rivals, and the race to rewrite trade. What began as a US-Canada trade clash quickly shifted gears into a global case study in power, policy, and production. Canada filed a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization, accusing the US of abusing Section 232. But with the WTO's appellate panel stalled by Washington's refusal to approve judges, a decision could be years away. Across the Pacific, policymakers in Tokyo, Seoul, and Canberra watched closely. Each had weathered Trump-era steel tariffs. If Ottawa's 50% retaliation proves effective, it could become the new playbook for allies frustrated with Washington's protectionist detours. China, always opportunistic, used the chaos to redirect excess steel via Kazakhstan and the Eurasian Economic Union, boosting market share in Europe while North America fought itself. The fallout hit fast. Tesla's Berlin plant may be forced to source higher-emission Indonesian aluminum. SpaceX's Montreal-sourced alloys? Delays could push upgrades to 2026. Canada countered with global messaging. Rules-based, climate-aligned, innovation-led. The US, in contrast, looked reactionary. The bigger question now, who leads the next industrial lap? So what's the bottom line? Let's wrap it all up. Final verdict. Grit, Greensteel, and the Great Reset. This wasn't just about aluminum sheets or coils of steel. Canada's response was a masterstroke of economic strategy. It fused climate goals, industrial renewal, and data-driven policymaking into something far greater than retaliation. This was offense with intention. Carney's 50% tariff wasn't a political tantrum, it was torque. Torque that reshaped the playing field from brute force protectionism to smart, sustainability-led competition. Canada isn't just defending itself, it's emerging as a values-driven, climate-forward industrial rival. As Trump fires up campaign engines with old-school protectionism, the real test is whether voters will buy into the symbolism or feel the real-world pain of supply chain breakdowns and rising costs. This modern trade war may look like politics, but it's a full-blown industrial reset. So now we ask you, will Canada's Greensteel plan transform the future of EVs and aerospace? Can US automakers afford to stay quiet as costs mount? Are we witnessing a permanent shift in North America's trade hierarchy? Please leave a comment below to start a conversation. If you found this video insightful, be sure to subscribe to Highway Herald for the latest vehicle updates and in-depth analyses. Your support helps us bring you the best in automotive content. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's more exciting and informative content waiting for you.